exactly what this story is. It's just amazing. Titanic was called the world's safest ship. Cherry Mine was called the world's safest mine. It was doomed for disaster with that statement. But anyhow, when I read about it a little bit more and studied it, and wanted to talk a little bit more about the 12 heroes, the 12 people. A lot of them were townspeople after the disaster whistle blew and the escape shaft was sealed off, leaving the main shaft the only way in or out of the mine. There was no other way to save more people but to go down in that mine and just pull them out by hand. They were choking to death in the gangways. It had to be a horrible sight. 12 men, John Bundy, the mine manager, and 11 others went down 6 times with nothing more than wet rags over their faces, 6 times down a chimney that was about 300 feet deep, smoke coming out of it. By this time, the townspeople had known about the seriousness of the disaster. They have hundreds of them poured in to the company yard, were surrounding the main shaft where the elevator system was going up and down. And these 12 men 6 times went into that smoking chimney and pulled their friends, their family, their neighbors, their co-workers out. Before the 7th time, legend has it that the mine manager talked to the engineer controlling the steam engines that control the lift. He told them to follow the bell signals exactly coming up. They didn't want the elevator to come up with only 1 or 2 or 3 men. They had hundreds missing underground. So the engineer swore that he would, and when they went down that 7th trip into the smoke, a few moments after they were dropped down in that dark shaft, the bell next to this engineer started ringing off the wall. Clang, clang, clang. Engineer looked around at the townspeople pressing up against him. These signals don't mean anything. I don't know what to do. Clang, clang, clang. That kept ringing in his ear. People started screaming at him, pull him up. Something's wrong. Pull him up. His boss gave him his last order. He was going to follow his boss's order. Suddenly the bell stopped, and the silence must have been horrific throughout the company yard. The engineer knew something was horribly wrong, put the steam engine into gear, pulled that steel wire out of the smoke, and when that cage rose to the surface, all of these 12 guys were on fire in front of their family and friends. Not just dead, burning alive. Not only to signal the death of these 12 heroes, these martyrs who gave their lives for other people, signal the death of everybody else left below the surface. That was the last exit. Karen described accurately about the escape shaft and the main shaft. One of the big reasons for the loss of life is because the main shaft and the escape shaft were so close together. Hundreds of feet below the surface where the mine fire started near the stable area, caught the timbers on fire, caught a coal vein on fire itself, spread to these 2 holes, and eventually blocked both exits. Later that spring, later that year in the 1910, when they looked at the origins of the fire, when they tried to figure out how to prevent such a tragedy from occurring again, what was the easiest thing, the newest regulation they came up with? Simply move those 2 holes further apart so never again could both exits be sealed from a mine. A very simple thing. But that's what it takes, a tragedy. I had a person come in right after Titanic came out, and she came into my camera shop and she said, Steve, I just saw Titanic, I canceled my cruise. And I said, geez, you should go on the cruise because you know there's a seat on the lifeboat for you. It takes a tragedy to do the right thing, and that's exactly what happened in this case. Just amazing. At the time of this disaster in 1909, 5 to 7 people were getting killed in the northern coal fields per month. Could you imagine an industry today that would lose 5 to 7 people in a month? The government would come in and close that down. Why did they close this down? I think it's because immigrants worked there. Because these men didn't have any political say. These men couldn't stand up for themselves. Working in the coal mine was the best job they ever had. The best job they could find here. They didn't speak the language. They didn't trust the banks. All they had was each other. And when you got killed in a coal mine, that's how you survived, by the charity of your church, your family, your friends. But after that mine disaster, the Illinois State Legislative Body knew that they had to do something. They knew they had to pass a workman's compensation law. They knew they should hold companies responsible for the safety of its employees. The Cherry Mine disaster was the first time in Illinois history that a company was held liable for the safety of its employees. $1,800 went to the families whose breadwinners were killed in the disaster. $1,800, a fortune in 1910, but never enough for a loss of a loved one. It's an adventure story. The Cherry Mine is not some dry, drab historical story about people digging in tunnels. It's an adventure story. It's a story of how people would survive and struggle in these coal mine communities, how they would survive and struggle every day just going to work. There were an amount of people who went at some periods of the year, who went down before the sun came up, and who came home after the sun was already set. They went for weeks, months, without seeing daylight. These were the kind of stock that the Illinois Valley is made of. The people oneness, he was exactly right. Oneness. We all came together. Everything we have in the Illinois Valley, everything we have in Illinois started around Starved Rock State Park, the heroes, French heroes, Father Marquette and Joliet paddling along. They even talked about the first coal that they saw sticking out of the banks of the Illinois River. Coal has always been a great part of Illinois history and will continue to be. They say there's enough coal reserves underneath our feet right now in the state of Illinois to power the world's entire energy needs for 200 to 300 years. That's right now. Middle East owns the oil, America owns the coal. We have to come up with new scrubbing techniques. We have to tell these children that the search for energy has always been closely linked to disaster. Now, a nuclear power accident would never, never be compared to a coal mine tragedy, right? Because that would affect tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. Illinois owns a lot of the coal, like I said. We also have the most nuclear power plants of any state in the nation. We have to give these kids the information. We have to give these kids, our young students, information and the studies to let them realize where they want their energy come from. If we want to build more nuke plants, if we want to build more hydroelectrical plants, there's only one right now in the Illinois. Marseilles, Illinois is about to build the second one. If we want to build more coal mines, they're building a coal mine down by us right here in Springfield, Illinois, that you're really just going to take the coal out of the ground and dump it right into a power generator. They're going to scrub this coal that has high sulfur content, Illinois does, until it's a cleaner-based product. Right now, it's against the law for Illinois to burn Illinois coal. We ship ours out, we ship other coal in. Scientists, technicians are working on that coal to get the sulfur out, to get the chemicals out, to burn it cleaner, and we have hopes that hopefully in the future that they can pulverize coal so fine that it actually becomes a gas. They can shoot it right into our furnaces just like natural gas now. There's a lot of science to be done in coal mining. And when I talk about the kids to coal mining, I said the future of coal mining will come back to the Illinois Valley. When the money gets right, the price gets right, they'll come back for our coal, won't they? In northern fields. It's still sitting there. When the money gets right, they'll come and get it. But it won't be coal mine like we're discussing tonight, and it won't be coal mine like you see at the Science and Industry Museum at that coal mine exhibit too. How do you make coal mines safer? You simply take the human element out of it. You send robots and computers and have people stationed on top, manning the monitors and the equipment, and that's how coal mining is going to happen very soon in the future. There will be no men at all in the coal mines. No men. And it's just change, but it's safer, and we're going to get the coal, and that's what they're going to do to take the human element out of it. And we have to remember the men and the boys of the Cherry Mine disaster. And that's why you always hear men and boys, men and boys. They had that law that nobody under the age of 16 could work in the mine. It was often ignored, never regulated. Dozens of little kids working in the mines all over north central Illinois. And it looks really strange to us looking back now to have 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds in the mine. But mom and dad didn't have any formal education. They needed the money, but their boys got strong enough, old enough, tall enough. They pulled them out of school and set them right down in the shafts. Nothing was wrong with that back then. And that's the way families existed. Miners were paid, I believe, $1.08 per ton of coal in the days of the Cherry Mine. Two guys working in teams all day could mine 5 tons of coal, $5.40 split between two guys. That's why father worked with son. That's why brother worked with brother. The families needed the money. And I sing the song. Everyone here sang the song. Tennessee Ernie Ford, 16 tons. I owe my soul to the company store. I didn't know what that meant until I met Peter Donna. He was an old-timer, lived in Cherry. It was the end of his life. He was in his 80s. And he was one of the last living survivors who actually was working in the mine that horrible November 13th, 1909 day. He was in the bottom level working with his dad,